Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me, I now have Professor Anthony Kila, Professor of Strategy and Development and Institute Director at the Commonwealth Institute of Advanced and Professional Studies, as well as Professor David Aworawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos. Well, let's start this segment of the program by first congratulating Professor Aworawo, whose name showed up in the list of members of governing councils of tertiary institutions. Professor Aworawo has been appointed a member of the governing council of the Federal Polytechnic, Orogun, in Delta State. Professor Aworawo, congratulations. And I hope you know that this has implications. I mean, this is what we do regularly on other programs. This Day Live should not be an exception. Congratulations. But very quickly to this subject. We have had three guests looking at topical issues. Prince Uche Secondus, former chairman of the People's Democratic Party, discussing political developments in Rivers State and the People's Democratic Party. We had Dr. Ayo Teriba, CEO, Economic Associates, looking at a number of economic issues, the pension funds controversy, inflation rate, the general management of the economy, and what can be done. He offered some solutions. And then the big sports issues of the day, Usyk beating Tyson Fury, and today is the last day of the Premier League. The matches are still ongoing. Fulham is ahead of Luton, Chelsea is ahead of Bournemouth, Liverpool is ahead of Wolves, Manchester City is ahead of West Ham, and Everton and Arsenal are still level as at after 51 minutes of play. We still expect what will come up at the end of the day. Let me start with you, Professor Aworawo.
I will go in that order in which the guests appeared. First, the crisis in Rivers State, which is expanding by the day and taking nasty dimensions. The guest spoke well. I mean, he identified the issues, Godfather versus Godson. Of course, he also concluded by saying that what the focus should be the interests of Rivers State and the people of Rivers State, development of the state and all that. So I agree with him on all of that, but of course the details are here and there. What I would just say is that those who have had their time and are no longer in the saddle should allow those who are in the saddle to, govern. They can give advice. I listened to somebody interviewed on this program a few days ago who said that, a lady, a former commissioner of information in that state, that ultimately you have one chief executive at a particular time. You may not agree with some of the things he or she does. You can give advice. If he likes, he takes it. If he likes, he doesn't. If he performs woefully, he will be voted out in the next election. But Rivers, the governor should be allowed to govern. And all sides should be guided by the rule of law. Once all sides are guided by the rule of law, things will be a lot easier. But right now, we have seen legalities on different fronts. We hope that at the end of the day, the rule of law will now prevail, because they had some gentlemanly agreement, some negotiations, which many of the things arrived at didn't quite follow the rule of law. Now that things have turned topsy-turvy, we hope that everybody will return to the rule of law and that will prevail. And when that happens, everyone will know where he belongs and wait for the next election. So let Rivers breathe, that's what we'll say. And Rivers will breathe when those who are breathing down the neck of those who are there now relax. One cannot have everything every time. If you were thinking it will go this way, it doesn't go that way. Just keep your peace. Elections are every 4 years, and see if you can change things to your advantage in the next election. If you can't, let Rivers people speak. But there is one thing about the Rivers crisis I want to comment on. Everybody says that the former governor, Wike, made Fubara governor. Even Fubara himself says, well, he seems to acknowledge that. He speaks a lot to the way politics takes place in Nigeria. that one man made another man governor, and not the people of Rivers elected their governor. It speaks a whole lot about the political system, the electoral system, and the electorates themselves. I mean, is it not an insult to say one man made the other man governor? But that's the reality. Everybody see, there seems to be consensus on that. So the electorate themselves need to put their thinking cap. The next election, how should they vote? Should they allow one man to make another man governor over them and create this kind of crisis that we have? So food for thought for everybody, including the good people of Rivers State. Dr. Teriba spoke extensively about the inflation, the 3.68 or thereabouts percent, which I think is a lot less than what the reality is. When you look at, go to the market, virtually everything, 200%, some are holding up to 400%. So where they arrive at 30% remains well. But the inflation, the reality is that the prices continue to go up, and it has exacerbated poverty in the country. People can no longer meet their basic needs. I mean, it's obvious. You don't need to go far to see this reality. There was a particular point he made, which I agree with him entirely on, that as long as the foreign reserve remains very low, there is not much you can build on that. You know, issue of confidence, issue of having the means to be able to show up the naira. I mean, of course, it has a direct link to the volatility of the naira. And as long as there is the volatility up tomorrow, down the other day, you have this kind of inflationary pressure. So shoring up the foreign reserve is a key thing. But he didn't quite speak a lot on that, how you have to shore it up. Perhaps I should comment on the aspect he didn't speak elaborately about. And that is the drastic reduction in oil exports. When this government came in, there were hopes. There was optimism that things would get better because the exports started going up, oil exports. But the thing there's now a reversal. The thing has started coming down to around 1.2 something, 1.3 million barrels per day, which is disturbing because, of course, we know that is where the bulk of our earning comes from. What can be done to change that, trajectory will be crucial to, shoring up the foreign exchange, the foreign reserve, and at the same time also, affecting inflation, economic stability, and the rest of them. Then for USIC, somehow I thought I felt that USIC was going to win, even though when they entered the ring, you saw USIC and you saw Fury. You say, how would USIC be able to box this huge, guy? But it tells us that everything has its technique. It's not just the size and the height that is important. I mean, the technique, which was what USIC used maximally. And, congratulations to him. For the Premier League, well, it seems that the Man City will win the thing again, the way it's going. But let's wait and see how it pans out. I would have wished that Arsenal won, because Arsenal has not won in 20 years. I don't support any of those clubs, but once you win, I always want somebody else to smile. That is my own. I don't support any of them, but when one is winning and winning and winning, I want somebody else to win. Let another set of people smile. But from the way it's looking, it doesn't seem that Man City will give up the so. Well, the Arsenal people they should just be happy that at least they've tried, and then go all the way the next season, and hopefully that will be their time.
Well, Arsenal fans are always looking forward to the next season.
Well, it's like that.
It's like a jinx. Professor Kila.
Arsenal fan are used to hoping in the future. The future tomorrow will be better. Well, I mean, let's go with the same order. Let's start with River State. Two major things about River State. Number one is that, really, I think, on one side, it is naive to think an outgoing governor will not be influential in who comes after him, But it's the way politics is. They will want to be part of it. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. But I think the bigger lesson here, for most people, given the closeness between Wike and Fubara, given the kind of domination, perceived domination or real domination that Wike had in Rivers politics when he was there, I think the lesson for sitting governor, future governor, right now is to know that this thing of godfatherism is not as linear as it appears. It's not so straightforward that things might happen. If it's not so safe, perhaps they should learn to plan for tomorrow without holding down the state where they were. It is time Nigerian politicians start projecting that once I leave a place, what happens to me? So that the mentality of sitting tight on a chair or holding their hands on whoever is there, that mentality can be defrayed. The other thing that we need to say very clearly, and I've had a chance to say it on the last time we were here, is that the victims of this, the injured part of this whole thing, is the people of River State. Because whilst all this back and forth is going on, governance is suffering, or at least people are not talking about the people of River State. They're talking about loyalty to Wike, loyalty to Fubara, loyalty to one part of old governors, one loyalty to some leaders. People are not talking about the people of River State. And I think the people of River State, I think they need to get angry. They need to step in to say, no, what about us? Never mind who's who. In terms of the probe thing, well, I think it's a good thing to probe. This is one place where citizenry gains, when the elites are competing, when leaders are competing themselves. It is one part where citizenry gain, because even if it's to spite themselves, as some people say, the people will gain because things will be exposed or not, and accountability is something that the people of the state and the country will gain from it. It is also interesting to note, beyond what Secondus said, actually, let's talk about what Secondus said very briefly. So, from what Prince Uche Secondus has said, Wike seems to be the problem of the PDP at the moment, in the sense that he's not allowing it to go on. He's fighting them with politics and with court. And I think the leaders of PDP need to get themselves in a room with or without Wike, look at themselves and say, what do we do about it? It's an indictment on the leadership of PDP that one man can hold them down this way, no matter how bad the man is, or no matter how powerful he is. They need to, find a gumption to get out of it. They need the courage of voice and the clarity of mind to say, what do we do about it? And that's a terrible thing. The other side is that, amazingly, whilst Wike has gone quiet, Fubara has found his voice and courage, and he's the one being vocal now, and he's on the attack. I guess, it's like football or basketball. One is playing defense, the other one is playing attack. Let's see how it goes, unless Wike is on his way out totally and he's lost his, unless, he's gone beyond where he shouldn't have gone at all. So, but for Rivers, I think we, the people, should find a way to get preeminence over the politics of warring factions. Economy. Dr. Yoteriba raised a lot of points, and I tend to agree with most. Let's start with the pension fund. He raised a very important point, which we should not miss as viewers, to say that, okay, he didn't say that, let's put it this way. Generally, the way, traditionally, in terms of practice, the way pension funds are managed is that it is invested into stock, bonds, and real estate. At the moment, some people are looking for an alternative thing, moving forward. That's the practice. And it is true that already a significant amount of the pension fund are already invested in government holdings anyway, So the decision of government to use it one way or the other, I think is a sensational thing. But and this is the point we need to make, that sensation which opposition parties were able to make, they're able to make it because of the trust deficit that people have in our politics. In reality, what they were talking about, the underlying tone, was not the appropriateness or not to use that fund. What they were hinting at is that when politicians or government touches money, a lot of it tends to disappear. It's a matter of trust. That is what they were hinting at. And I think the government of the day will do everybody a favor if they can rebuild that trust. I am very fascinated about the idea of raising forex to balance and to stabilize the volatility in the forex market. That, for me, is a fascinating conversation that we need to properly have. And I think whilst Ayoteriba, I think to some extent rightly, but I think he exaggerated a bit, recognizes, the great things that the CBN governors has done, I think what is missing is a clear policy to say, are the 3 to 5 things we're going to do to shore up our forex. Very clear policies to say we're going to move this way. I would suggest, for example, in line with some of the things he has said, that we go directly to go, and I agree with the idea of going to equity market. I would say, for example, let us take some of our assets, go to the equity market, not borrowing, go to the equity market to go and raise not just domestic, but forex, international fund. A part of NNPC, let us settle some people to go and list them in London Stock Exchange, in New York, so we gain forex directly. Some of our infrastructures, as he rightly said, we don't have to sell them out, part ownership or leasing them in a way that they generate forex. Everything we need to do. I think the government, rather than taxing Nigeria at the moment, should be looking outward to go and bring in forex to shore up our reserve. Another thing that can be done is to take a closer look at the diaspora, not just some kind of carnival or representation of going to meet them in jail or getting somebody. We have to look at the economics of the diaspora. And for example, the remittance of the diaspora at the moment is not coming to Nigeria directly. You cannot force them because they have apps that they're using. What can be done is to find a way to incentivize a process that rewards those sending in their forex into Nigeria. So when somebody sends 100, 1,000, or maybe send 50,000 pounds, that's suspicious, not 50,000 pounds. 100, 1,000, 5,000 pounds to Nigeria. Let the dollar, let the pound come into Nigeria directly to shore up our forex. I think those are the kind of things we need to be looking at. We need to have this kind of key point to say, this is the way we're going to do it. The other thing, whether it's oil or non-oil export, we also need to take time to encourage our export market so that we're earning it. We need to export skills, we need to export products, we need to export services. But we really need to open up a desk that say, this is what we're going to do to try to get $10 billion. And to do it, this is, that's a very clear plan that I think is missing at the moment. We're in quarter of the mandate, of the 4 years mandate, 1 year is gone, that's 25% of it. Let us hope as we get to the second quarter, this kind of plans come up. Interestingly, whilst these are about monetary things, getting in forex, a lot of it is actually fiscal policy. I'm a big believer in fiscal policy for economics. The monetary one helps, but we need to push for the fiscal policies big time.
Well, you don't want to comment on the Premier League?
Well, the Premier League, Professor Aworawo wants to do turn by turn. He says Manchester has been winning that. He hopes Arsenal wins. Arsenal people are used to abuse. They're used to disappointment. So I don't think anything will happen if they don't win. They won't be happy, but, life goes on. Let's see what happens. It's a matter of minutes. But I'm not happy that Tyson lost. I was actually rooting for him for some reason. And I thought he was going to win.
Like Drake.
Yeah, I didn't bet. Oh. My support was emotional and moral.
Okay.
I didn't put my money where my mouth is on that one. I was hoping he would. But unlike what Aaron was saying, I think if he gets his act together, he can actually come back, because you can see that he had lost a bit of things in that fight. It wasn't very tight, let's put it that way. Yes, the other chap had some techniques, but he wasn't very tight either. Whilst we're at it, the sports minister, other part of Nigeria, we all talk about EPL. I really want to try an appeal. I hope we can go and rediscover our league as well and our sporting game, so that we can generate equal interest that we have in EPL. And I think the next time people come to you when they talk about Arsenal, ask them which Nigerian team they support as well.
Very good point there. But let's go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where 3 persons have been reported killed in Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo, during a shootout between armed men in military uniforms and the guards of a prominent politician. The army has described the incident as an attempted coup. The violence erupted early Sunday morning, resulting in the death of 2 police officers and 1 of the attackers. A Democratic Republic of Congo military spokesman, in a televised address, confirmed the arrest of those behind the failed coup, including several foreigners. Brigadier General Sylvain Ekenge reported that the coup attempt was nipped in the bud by Congolese defense and security forces, assuring that the situation was now under control. He did not provide additional details. The incident occurred during a period of political turmoil within President Felix Tshisekedi's governing party, which is grappling with a crisis over the postponed election for the parliament's leadership, initially scheduled for Saturday. The armed men targeted the Kinshasa residence of Vital Kamerhe, a federal legislator and candidate for Speaker of the National Assembly, but were repelled by his guards, according to his spokesman, Michel Mutu Muhima, on the X social media platform. Well, again, the threat to democracy, now in Democratic Republic of Congo. They had general elections in December, which Felix Tshisekedi won by about 68%. That was itself a problem. And now, you know, parliamentary positions causing problem. Vital used to be chief of staff to the president. They not only attacked his residence, they also attacked the president's office. And with what we have seen in places like Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad now has transited, Gabon, you know, there's this threat to the democratic process across Africa. And we had asked, the last time we discussed this, is that military intervention, are we going back to that season? And, you know, is democracy failing in Africa, and why? Professor Kila, let me come back to you.
Well, there's somebody who said in the, I think in 1962, I can't remember who said that, you know, coups are bad things. Once you've tasted one coup, you tend to, another one tends to come. Democracy is always something that needs to be watched over. As you know, as they say, the price of democracy is vigilance. You cannot sit back and say everything is in place and nothing will happen. Bad things are likely to happen. So we have no choice but to keep vigil over democracy. The issue we're having in African countries where democracy is at stake are twofold. One is the process that is not democratic enough, because too many elections are flawed with rigging or suspicions of rigging. There are people who don't want to leave power, or they want to put nepotism, they want to put their people in power. So that is a problem of legitimacy. The other problem is the problem of delivery, where democracy in people's mind goes with good governance. So where you have a government that is either not legitimate or is legitimate but is not delivering, the temptation to not trust democracy is always there. A weak government, an unpopular government, is always something that becomes attractive to military people to come in. I would urge people to go and read the statements of Ibrahim Babangida on how coups get their legitimacy, on this kind of thing. You know, it's very telling. Give me a country where the leaders are legitimately in power and where they govern well, and coup will be something very remote to them. It doesn't mean you sit down and say it won't happen, but it is remote to them. Whilst we're at it, I think countries should stop calling themselves democratic as well. All the countries that are called democratic, they tend not to be truly democratic. We need to look at that as well.
Well, it's DR Congo's historical development is very disheartening. They've been at war almost with unpunctuated regularity since 1960. We recall the crisis between Moïse Sombe, Joseph Kasavubu, Patrice Lumumba at the outset of independence. And from that point to date, the country hasn't known stability, it hasn't known peace. And so the experience of DR Congo is particularly disturbing because this is a country with potentials, you know, in all dimensions, but it's a country where poverty is so extensive, pervasive, quality of life is so low on account of instability. One point to add to what Professor Kila has said is this crass selfishness on the part of the political class. Prebendalism and neo-patrimonialism continue to characterize politics in Africa. And that is a major, factor in the coups and instability that these countries, have experienced. We talked about the election in December where Felix Tshisekedi won. What are we talking about now? Leadership of the parliament that could easily be resolved and the country moves forward. But everybody thinks only of himself. The common good is thrown into the dustbin. And that's why we are where we are. Look at the case of Togo. So bizarre, what has happened there, where, somebody is going to practically govern for life with the constitutional change. And all the structures are just looking, supporting the... if that country faces political crisis, technical crisis moving forward, we should be surprised.
No surprise at all.
So these are the issues. Good governance, term limits, keeping to it, not doing illegal constitutional change to be able to remain in government in perpetuity. These are things that need to happen. And the AU and the regional bodies, ECOWAS, SADC, and the rest, they have a responsibility to stick to this. There are conventions, there are, that they have acceded to agree to ensure that this is the path that Africa follows. But when all of these things happen, we don't seem to hear a lot from the AU and the regional.
But you see,
they need to wake up.
Something about
as far as that is
we
concerned.
say we should wake up, but there is something flawed about the constitution of regional bodies as well, because they're not regulatory body. They're actually bodies that aid function of government. So, you see, if they sanction somebody or expel them, it is against their own benefit, because they want everybody to be inside so they can function. So I think at some point, we really need to rethink even these organizations like AU and ECOWAS as well.
Well, the question is, are these, organizations, are they effective? ECOWAS has its protocols.
Yes.
AU has what it calls constitutive acts.
Yes.
And these are rules-based, rules of engagement among the members. So it's not just about paying your dues.
Yeah.
It's about you respecting the terms of engagement.
Yeah.
And what we find is that this is in violation.
Yes.
And the structures in the AU and in the ECOWAS have proved ineffectual in addressing some of these,
I'm even talking about being proactive now, not waiting until there are coups and all that, and they begin to react. Being proactive, and then they are a club. They should talk to themselves.
Well, that's why the AU has the peer review mechanism. Now, how effective is that peer review mechanism?
It is not. They're paper tigers.
Well, let's take our, last program, on this edition of the program, our last subject. President Bola Tinubu has approved the release of 90 billion naira to subsidize the cost of this year's Hajj pilgrimage. This was according to Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima, who made the announcement during the inaugural Hajj airlift at the Sir Ahmadu Bello International Airport in Benin Kebbi, the capital of Kebbi State, on Wednesday. He emphasized the president's commitment to religious pilgrimage, stating that it aligns with government policies aimed at fostering peaceful coexistence and social harmony among Nigeria's diverse populace. He urged intending pilgrims to pray for the success of the administration and to act as good ambassadors for Nigeria by diligently observing all Hajj protocols in Saudi Arabia. Well, Professor Aworawo, let me come back to you again. That 90 billion will do a lot to fix schools, to fix so many things. Even the states are sponsoring people on pilgrimage. 90 billion now from federal government for the Muslims. The Christians too, very soon will want to go to Jerusalem. So they too will demand their own 90 billion. So what do you say to this? Well,
I hope that with all the graph, there have been commentaries across the week. In fact, on Arise, we've had several, guests who have spoken on it. I just hope that the mistake in the action, in the policy, will have been realized by government, and that this will be the last that will happen. Section 10 of the Constitution is very clear regarding issues of being a secular state and not getting involved in religious issues. It is very clear. In addition to the exigency that we face, in terms of economic development, funds are needed to, settle all sorts of things. Two things. First, we hope that the government has realized the error, and moving forward, we won't have anything like that. That's just what I want. Then the second, those who want to go on, pilgrimage itself, they should be, if you don't have the money to go, you should be contented that you're able to worship God anywhere. It is not, in all the holy books, it's not stated. In fact, it's only in the Quran, it's only in the Bible, it's not even stated that go on pilgrimage. It is not really that it's only when you go on pilgrimage that you are authentic, So people should have that satisfaction that if I don't have it, God understands. When I was growing up in Badon, Akpo, Kila, and the rest of them, people used to hide. When they don't, yes, Akpo.
Where is that?
That's in the Osun State now. It used to be Oyo State in those days.
That
axis.
grew up in a village.
I think that axis. People used to. They will pretend that they have gone on Hajj. We used to call them Alaji Keja. They will pretend that they have gone on Hajj when they have not. They will go and hide during the Hajj period. When others are returning, they will all show up from nowhere. Some were not caught, but the ones that were caught, they were given the name Alaji Keja. So they should be contented that you can. It's not whether you go on pilgrimage that makes you a servant of God, but what you do and how you worship your God. That's settled, and the government itself. If you have the funds, you go. If you don't have the funds, stay. You are still accepted by God. We don't have to go on pilgrimage to be, an accepted servant of God, so to speak. So I hope this will be the last that this will, because so much has been said, and it's difficult to hear any positive comment regarding that. And even considering where we are in the stream of things as far as economic development.
Well,
is
Christians
concerned.
Listening to you will say, before they say this is the
let's
last,
do our
let them
first.
give Christians their own 90 million.
First.
That's the kind of control we have.
It's
Professor
just
Kila.
unfortunate.
Well, I think it's not just unfortunate, the economics is bad, but I think it's vexatious, to put it mildly. There's no other way to put it. This kind of announcement, this kind of budget, it just tells you that there's something wrong with us as a people. There's something wrong with the leaders that conceive it. There's something wrong with the whole set of leadership that did not oppose to it. There's something wrong with those that are applauding it, including the Sultan of Sokoto. Let's call him out. At a time like this, God will understand if Nigeria does not put their money in their pocket to subsidize pilgrimage this year. What kind of God will not understand that people who are going through this should not be using their money to go and fund another country? And I think this navel-gazing self-centeredness does not even present us well for progress and prosperity. And we, the people, need to look at ourselves. You say, what is wrong with us, really? Because 90 billion, imagine that in health, imagine that for agriculture, imagine that in education. These are capital investment that will yield things. And if we are so crazed about going for pilgrimage, they can go next year, they can go another time. I want to tell people, even people who can afford it, this is not the time to be going for pilgrimage. God will understand. And we need to think it that way. And if we don't think it that way, then, we have to cry for our own oars. I say it again. A country that is telling me we to tighten their belt, that they need money, going to do this, is a figure of beggars in tuxedo.
Yeah, you were dragging the Sultan of Sokoto into it.
Yes.
He is the leader of the Muslim Ummah. His obligation is to defend the interests of
but he's
the
defending it in a
faithful.
bad way, yes.
Well, if government
stupid enough to do that.
If government cooperates and government
Yeah.
says we want to support you,
Yeah.
maybe for political reasons
Yes.
or for religious reasons, I don't think the leader of the Muslim faithful will reject that option.
I think
I think it's government that we must say that a government that says it will respect the rule of law should respect the rule of law and be confident enough to say that we stand by the rule of law.
No, I totally agree with you on the floor of government here. And I suspect that, unlike Professor Aworawo, who is hoping for a better future, I think until some people take government to court, to go and establish in the court of law, constitutionally, that this thing should not be allowed by government anymore, I suspect it will happen again. And I also think government pandering to people to sponsor this kind of thing is bad leadership. It's leading from behind rather than leading from the front. It's not taking people, it's pandering to their needs. And I suspect something dodgy about it, which is not a good thing. But I also indict religious leadership. I pick on the Sultan because he's the apex of the religious Islamic religion in Nigeria. I pick on the moral authority that if the government for politics is doing something wrong, the moral authority should look at them and say, this is not commonsensical. Maybe not this year. And guess what? If the moral authority says no to something that will benefit its side, it gives it higher credibility in the future. It's a long-term investment. It's a view that is missing in our leadership, generally speaking. It's a kind of view that if somebody does something against Christian, a Christian should stand up to say, don't fight him. Jesus said, let us forgive. It is something that if somebody says something against Muslim, a Muslim should stand up and say, we're not a violent religion, let's not do violence. That is the kind of engagement that moral leadership needs to offer, and that is missing in this country. And the fact that it's missing is getting us into trouble. Common sense, probity should be things that we should be striving at beyond partisan politics, because it affects it later on.
Okay, I'm sure we'll return to this subject. Today is a Pentecostal Sunday. Acts of the Apostles, chapter 2, verses 21 to 26. Yeah, so Christians, ahead of Trinity Sunday, will also say they want to go to Jerusalem.
Own. And we keep talking
about Jerusalem. And they will clamor for their own. And I'll see what you will say then.
Well, I will say the same thing. No, and I'll give you a third one. I will start mobilizing traditional rulers too, to say they want to go to somewhere. Either they want to go to Brazil, or they want to go to Ife, or they should take request for the 90 billion and do whatever they want with it. We have to be careful about these things.
Yeah, looks absurd. But thank you very much, Professor Anthony Kila, and thank you, Professor David Aworawo. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. For my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.